try
FBI
to.
special agent. Tracy, you've heard from Liz everything that we know, everything that's been released publicly, really. And we don't, investigators could be withholding information. What do you make of this so far?
I'm 100% sure that investigators are withholding information. We do that all the time. That is to protect the case. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I know the public wants this information. I think another thing to remember, though, about this ransom note is that it did not, well, we didn't receive note that it came out until about 3 days after all of this. So it's really, really hard to judge the veracity of this note. But it sounds like the FBI, and rightly so, is taking it seriously until they can disprove it. So much so that they arrested someone today in California for making a false ransom note. So it sounds to me that at this point, the FBI can't disprove this note. I think it's probably from a very heavily encrypted email that is proving very difficult to get into. And as such, they have to treat it as real.
If you take that to be real, right? And then you wonder, it's been days since Nancy has been gone. It doesn't look like, at least from now, there's been a lot of mistakes made in this. Even though we heard the sheriff tell Liz, which I'm sure you believe too, there's no such thing as a perfect crime. In your sense, does this look like somebody who was a professional criminal? I mean, does this look like somebody who had planned this? Is that what this looks like? Or we don't have enough information to know that?
Well, certainly we don't have enough information to know it for certain, but in my experience, I believe that this is something that was planned. And one of the things that really struck me at the news conference earlier this afternoon was the fact that the sheriff said that the DNA that was found at the scene really didn't yield any results. Even if they had put it in for standard testing, it would be back by now. That takes about 5 days for standard. And so the fact that they have not been able to find any at the scene, that tells me that whomever or the group of people that did this really took some precautions to the point that they actually removed that Ring doorbell camera as well. So I feel, based on that this was planned.
And then finally, I do want to ask you, you haven't seen, I mean, look, maybe I'm wrong. I cover a lot of news here. We cover everything that happens across the country. I can't remember a lot of abductions happening recently that are like this. I mean, this is reminiscent of things that happened in the 70s and 80s, maybe the 90s. I mean, is this, I don't want to say a new trend, but is this unique that this has happened? It feels like it's been a long time since this happens. Kidnappings happen all the time in Latin America and Mexico and Colombia. It happens all the time. I actually think Latin America and South America are the kidnapping capitals of the world, even more than the Middle East. But I do want to ask you, and this country hasn't happened in a long time, is this rare?
In my opinion, this is exceedingly rare. What we see a lot of in this country are the cyber kidnappings, if you will, essentially kidnapping data, right, and holding that hostage to get ransoms. That's what we see a lot of here in the United States. Seeing this, particularly of an elderly person, is extremely rare, so much that the FBI doesn't have a task force for it. If you look at the individuals, what it said on their jackets that were at Savannah Guthrie's sister's home yesterday, it said ICAC, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children. And so they are the ones that do a lot of internet hoaxes and internet crimes, but the focus really is, unfortunately, on children. And so we really don't see a lot of this. It is exceedingly rare here in the States.
Tracy, we thank you for your help. We appreciate you being here tonight. I know this is a tough one. We don't want to speculate too much because we obviously always care about the people affected in these crimes. And it just happens that in this one, it's somebody who is our good friend and somebody who works with us. So we thank you for your time. And we're going to move on now to the top story. If we get more information, we will go back out to Liz. We're also tracking a triple threat of serious warning signs for the U.S. economy just a day after my exclusive overall sit-down with President Trump, where he promised job growth is on the horizon. New data points in another direction. The Bureau of Labor Stats says the U.S. job market hits lowest level since 2020 at the end of December. Another major report shows there were 108,000 layoffs in January, the most since 2009. And those grim outlooks coming as the stock market flails for a third straight day. Major tech companies seeing sharp drops related to AI. Joining me now is NBC Business and Data correspondent Brian Chung and Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. We thank you both for being here. Brian, I want to start you in our conversation. The president dismissed the idea that AI is going to take jobs, even though I told him a few times it is already eliminating jobs. Let's go to that clip right now. Let's play that exchange. If AI affects humanity in a negative way, Is that on you? Because some of these CEOs of AI companies say we need guardrails. This could get out of control. Does that worry you?
Everything's on me as president. Everything's on me. I can say this, it'll be the greatest jobs producer, it'll be the greatest military producer, it'll be the greatest medical producer. There'll be tremendous good. And there'll be probably some bad too.
Well, it's killing a lot of jobs. And what do you say to Americans who are going to lose their jobs to AI?
It's going to create a lot of jobs.
Hi, thanks for the
In a lot of
like.
ways, it's
Well,
taking
right
jobs from
now-
companies like Amazon. What would you say to those
But
Americans?
it hasn't really started. You know, these major plants haven't even been built. What you're
No,
going to
but Mr. President, AI has already started to take jobs because the
Okay,
technology is
ready?
there.
So we have, it's just announced, more jobs right now occupied in the United States of America than at any time
Okay,
for
guys.
existence,
Let
250
me find
years.
somebody talking about
There
her.
are more
I
people
don't know.
working today than
I
at
wanna
any
hear
time in the
about
history of our
him.
country.
I'll be right back.
That kills that question.
Yeah, look it up.
That's a good answer. That kills that question.
Mr. President, there's widespread concern that AI is going to wipe out a lot of jobs, manufacturing jobs. I
They
mean,
said the
there's
internet was going to do everything it was going to do, and robots are going to kill jobs. Everything's going to kill jobs, and
Duh. Well, you know everything gonna kill jobs. People don't know that. Okay. Hi guys, thanks for stopping by. I'll be there in 1 second. I'm trying to find some more news.
Show. This is an hour-long show. We have 4 live guests standing by, ready to take questions, comments, in all sorts of parts of this investigation and the coverage. But I also want to hear from you. I'm here. You can see my computer in front of me.
Hi
I'm
guys,
monitoring
thanks for
comments on
stopping by.
YouTube. I've got my information over here, and I'm going to be going back and forth throughout this show. And already one comment came in at the beginning of this. Have you ever seen a story like this? The answer is no. I believe this is the oddest and most strange story and case that I've ever covered in my career, and that is saying something given what true crime is all about. But I want to go over everything that we've learned new today about Nancy Guthrie. Of course, this is Savannah Guthrie's mom, the Today Show co-host. Nancy, abducted from her home late Saturday night, overnight into Sunday morning. This is now day 5 of the search for her, and there are several different things we have learned. As this week has gone on, we learned there were ransom notes that were sent to media outlets. We learned that there was blood on the front porch. We got answers as to whose blood that was today, and there is so much more about this. So let's go over everything that the sheriff, Chris Nanos, gave us in the press conference today, as well as the FBI special agent in charge of the Phoenix Division, Agent Yonke. We're going to go over everything that they said that we know at this hour tonight. So we know that Nancy Guthrie vanished. The last time anybody saw her was around 9:45 Saturday night. She had just been dropped off by her son-in-law. She had been eating dinner with her daughter and him, her husband. And that is the last time anybody heard from her. But we had a lot more that was given to us today. And I think the big question for Sheriff Chris Nanos was, do you believe she's alive? And if so, where do you think she is? And the sheriff started his press conference with this.
Right now, we believe Nancy is still out there. We want her home. Our department, the sheriff's department, along with all of our partners at the FBI, have been working around the clock. And we just want her home and find a way to get to the bottom of all of this, just as you do.
And the FBI now issuing a $50,000 reward for anybody who can lead to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie or who can lead to the arrest or conviction of the people who abducted her. I want to show you just a little bit of the behind the scenes of the press conference today. This is an all-out media circus. There has been so many people interested in this from around the world. There was an outlet from Australia here today. You have people from all over the nation here. I was talking to BBC earlier today. I've never seen a missing persons case or an abduction case take this off this quickly into the international spotlight with so much care and concern from people. Of course, the Guthrie family, Savannah, her brother Cameron, her sister Annie, all very concerned, and we're going to get into more of that as well. Let's start with the new information and the new timeline that the sheriff gave us today. This really sets up Nancy Guthrie's last known movements and then when the sheriff's office or the sheriff's department got involved. So I'm going to read off of this. It was at 5:32 p.m. that Nancy Guthrie took an Uber to her family's home for dinner. This is Saturday, January 31st. We now know that they've made contact with the Uber driver as part of this investigation. They have questioned that Uber driver, so we do know that aspect of this case. At 9:48 p.m., Nancy is dropped off at her Tucson home in the Catalina foothills by her son-in-law, and then the garage door opens. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door closes. Now this is where it gets really, really important, the timeline here, because this all goes to exactly when she was taken from her home. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera is disconnected, and we could see the frame that was on the front door when we were there. It was gone. At 2:12 a.m., the camera's software detects movement, but there's no video of that available because Nancy did not have a subscription with the company, so the footage wasn't saved, and that's why the sheriff told us that they were trying to forensically get this footage back and try to work with the company. That has not happened yet. We do not have any of the surveillance video. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. So 1:47 a.m., the doorbell's disconnected. 2:12, it detects somebody there, and 2:28, her pacemaker app disconnects from her phone, which would lead you to believe her phone's still in the home, she is taken away. It's about a 25-minute period that they believe something happened before she was taken. At around 11:56 a.m., her family the next day checked on her after she didn't show up for church. She's a devout churchgoer. This was something she always went to, and so friends at church called her family concerned. It was not like her to not show up. So her family goes to her house at 12 a.m. At 12:03 p.m., the family calls 911 to report a missing person, and at 12:15, investigators arrive and begin their search. I want to show you some video too of blood evidence at the home. It's apparent that when the family would have gone to search for her, they would have seen a concerning scene at the front door. And part of the reason for that, and we saw it too before they put crime tape back up, when they let the scene kind of like everybody could go up there and see it once they had processed it for the first time, you could see these blood droplets on the front porch, and for a while they didn't confirm that it was blood droplets, but today Sheriff Chris Nano is confirming that that blood was some of the first evidence that they sent to a DNA lab up in Phoenix. That was a rapid DNA testing. They got that back thinking that was maybe going to be the most conclusive evidence. It came back positive for Nancy's blood. That tells us obviously she was hurt in some way, but what it doesn't tell us is who the suspect is, because there was no suspect DNA that came back there. We also had new details in the ransom note today. The FBI confirming that in the ransom note, it demanded a certain amount of money, but also the person that wrote this said that Nancy had an Apple Watch and had mentioned a certain floodlight on the house. Now, obviously, anybody could probably walk by and notice a floodlight, but it was something that they took seriously because that was something that was at the scene. They are still investigating this. And when I say they're investigating the ransom note, I mean it because they've already made an arrest of somebody else who allegedly put out there a fake ransom note. And we're going to get more into that person, that imposter, and the arrest that was made later in this show. What did this ransom note say, and what do we know at this hour? Well, we know a deadline has now passed. And why do we know that? Well, first they were telling us a lot of details about the ransom note, but they weren't telling us exactly what the deadline was. And that's when I asked the special agent in charge about this ransom note, because how long do we go on until you say, yeah, this isn't it? And I want to play that question and his answer for you now. At what point do you deem the ransom note not credible if there is no communication that follows up since you received it? Like, what's that timeline where you say, no proof of life, there's no more, this isn't credible?
I think we start to look at what the deadlines were on the note. First, I think it was 5 o'clock today. And then it had a second deadline after that. So we are continuing in a normal kidnapping case. There would be contact by now, trying to discuss that. But those are the timeframes we are looking at as we move forward.
Are you able to say that second deadline that was given?
I don't have that with me right now.
Okay, so he ended up elaborating just a little bit more after my question. The second deadline is sometime on Monday, but they didn't give us a time on that, and we don't know how much was being demanded. The other thing they wouldn't go into tonight was if that deadline is not met tonight, and if that deadline is not met on Monday, what's supposed to happen to Nancy Guthrie? And that was something that they do not want to release publicly as of now. They gave us an opportunity today to ask a couple follow-up questions as well. And so I had that question for the FBI agent, but I also had a couple questions for Sheriff Chris Nanos. Now, a lot of people have seen Nancy Guthrie's home now. They were taking evidence out and securing it again yesterday. And that was a bit perplexing because Sheriff Nanos had told us that the crime scene had been completely processed and was clear by Tuesday. So why were they back out there yesterday? Well, it turns out the FBI, I think, wanted to also get in there as well. But it begs the question, why would you have shut down that crime scene so quickly to where those of us like the media, the family, other people could go up there and then come back and put the crime scene tape up? That seems like a problem, and I asked the sheriff about it. I know you had the crime scene process. You said you went back out there. Your partners wanted to see it. But you guys were actively taking out evidence yesterday. Was there something you missed the first time, or did you get a new piece of information that led you to believe you needed to go back out and take more than you had that first day?
You know, I know that we get information that will come, and this is just any crime scene that we look at. We may go out to a crime scene and think we got it all, go analyze evidence, and something comes back and says, hey, did you check this? We're not going to just say, oops, and not go.
So did something new come in?
In this instance, it really was the FBI just wanted to go, hey, can we take a look at it?
Are you worried about that being contaminated at all because there was people in now?
No, I'll let the courts worry about that. We will certainly be open to the courts of anything that's been removed from that house, and we follow the rules of laws. We get court orders and go back and reapply for another warrant if need be. All those things we're very careful of.
Now, the media kind of pressed Sheriff Nanos on this a couple of times, and he did eventually say to another question asked that, you know, playing Monday morning quarterback, looking back, should they have kept the scene secure? Probably. Did they necessarily expect to go back out there? We're not sure. But as they have more partners coming in, more agencies that are working on this with them, it seems like they wanted to get another look. The thing is, though, they took evidence out yesterday, and that likely is being tested right now. What was it that they took out, and why was it? It was like this rectangular, at least that we could see, a rectangular, almost like a mirror type look, but it was covered. So we didn't get a real good, close-up view of what that was. They are clearly still testing things, and they are clearly still investigating. Let's talk about suspects. The reality is tonight, the sheriff has made it very clear. There are no identified persons of interest, no identified suspects. We know that there was rumors and that there was information circulating that a family member may have been involved. At this point, at least in the investigation, the sheriff says there are no identified persons of interest or suspects. But he also did say that they have not ruled anybody out. There is not one person that they can say absolutely is not involved, did not do this. And I said it a little bit earlier in the show, they also were questioning that Uber driver that took Nancy to her daughter's home for dinner. He didn't really give a conclusive, is the Uber driver ruled out, but it did seem that they've made contact and they got at least that witness testimony, so to speak, of some of Nancy Guthrie's last movements before this all happened. They also confirmed today that the ransom note that was sent to TMZ and to two local Tucson news stations is the same ransom note. And that was something that we believed to be true, but today the FBI confirming that. And to that point, I want to bring in our first live guest tonight, former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing. Lance, can you hear me okay?
I can, Brianna.
Okay, thank you so much. So if people don't know, Lance and I have worked together for many, many years. You've worked on a number of high-profile cases. And when it comes to the ransom note and what we learned today, I want to ask you a little bit more about it. We've been kind of communicating throughout the week, and I know you've been giving some really great analysis from the FBI's standpoint as to what happens now. So based on what the FBI special agent in charge revealed today about what was in the ransom note, these deadlines, what did you make of that information? Does that lead you to believe this is credible or not at all?
Well, very good question. I would like to start off by saying, I think the sheriff's saying there aren't any identified suspects and everybody's still in play. That's exactly how they have to play it right now. Any good investigator should be objective like that. The ransom note is just one of those leads right now. After all the information that came out in the press conference, I feel that law enforcement agencies, the FBI and the sheriff's office, aren't quite sure. They have to follow it up through due diligence, and it's probably one of the best things they've got going. But there's some facts that they relayed today that make me suspect the legitimacy of this ransom note. First of all, from the outside looking in, sending it to 3 media outlets and not to the family or to a law enforcement agency, when the motive is financial gain, that is odd. If the motive is ideological and you want to get a statement out and want people to know, sending it to a media outlet makes sense. And historically, that's how it happens. But if, for financial gain, sometimes to a media outlet, but almost always to the family. And then not having any communication with the family or law enforcement since the ransom note came out, that is really unusual. And it doesn't get a kidnapper whose goal is for financial gain anywhere. They have a deadline, they want it met. Talking to the family to get that money in their hands is what they would ultimately want. And they're just not doing that here. So
right.
That's definitely a sign of illegitimacy.
Well, and also too, I know no contact with this person at all, but typically if you have a ransom note, do you see proof of life in some form or fashion? You know, typically from somebody who would send that to say, hey, this is legit?
Yeah, not always. And in fact, the statement the family put out, I know the FBI talked about counseling and trying to help the family through that. It's a very difficult time. No family's ever done that before. So that's exactly what they were doing. And proof of life is textbook. That's one thing you ask for and you try to get. The other thing is a communication line open. And they were begging for that throughout that heart-wrenching statement. So both of those are typical negotiator tactics or investigator tactics in a case like this that they have to get going. Without either of those, proof of life or an open line of communication, the lead goes nowhere. And really nobody wins, kidnappers or law enforcement or the family. It just fades.
That's it. As I'm monitoring some live questions here, somebody asked, is it odd that there were 2 deadlines given and not just one?
It is odd, and what we don't know are the facts around those deadlines. Like there probably were other details within the ransom note that investigators just aren't willing to make public yet, and that is odd for 2 deadlines. Like you don't hedge your bet. If you're a kidnapper, you're saying, hey, this deadline and that's it, and then only if they miss that deadline or you have other communications about we can't get that much money in time or we can't deliver it that way, then you negotiate, right? There's no line of communication open. There's no negotiation happening here. So it just strikes me as being a bit illegitimate. There are a few other points in there as well. One, you already have a history of fraudulent ransom notes. There was an arrest made today by the FBI on somebody who had done that. So this case is bringing that type of attention and those type of people. And then the last one is the facts. Like investigators are looking very closely at the facts that ransom note portrayed, right? What they knew. And if they knew something that was very exclusive to the crime scene, that would be telling. The facts that they brought up in the press conference, not at all exclusive to somebody who would only know that information if they're in that house and close to the victim. It was pieces of information you get from watching the news. So that is another sign that I think may not be a credible ransom note.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, a floodlight and an Apple Watch, there's floodlights on every house, and there's an Apple Watch to every other person. I mean, those are 2 pretty vague, generic details. Absolutely. I thought as well.
And if you're a kidnapper and you want to bring legitimacy to your ransom note because you want the money, right? That's what you want. So you want them to think you're legitimate. You're going to say something very specific, something that only the victim would know, that when you're talking with her, she would tell you, something like that. It doesn't appear that that was in this note, but again, we haven't read the note in its entirety.
So what you've learned, do you think this is leaning towards, this isn't going to go anywhere with these ransom notes by Monday?
From what we know, and we only know a limited amount of facts, but from what we know, one deadline's already passed with no communication. And I think there are some 3 or 4 signs in the information that was provided to the public today that indicate it's suspect, very suspect.
Yeah, and my last question for you, just when you're dealing with a ransom note that comes in, especially if it comes in digitally, how does the FBI trace that? I mean, do you have to go through servers and encrypted IT addresses or IP addresses? Like, what does that look like from an FBI's perspective, and how hard is that to do?
It is harder and harder to do. Luckily, in the FBI, we have experts that's all they do, and that's who I would go and ask, and I'd have them working on it, and they would run it, and oftentimes it would involve sometimes dozens of different subpoenas to different companies, as proxy servers back and forth would run to, and sometimes you get nowhere trying to trace that back, but sometimes you do get somewhere. I always found really good information in the text, the context, how it's delivered, what they know, and then here in this case, they wanted money. They likely left some bank account number. They left some means, if it's a legitimate ransom note, some means for the government and the family to deliver that money. So that's another line that they're investigating. The FBI is going down and trying to figure out everything they can about it.
Well, Lance, I appreciate you so much. Your analysis is always spot on. I mean, I've appreciated you for years, but especially on something so sensitive like this, so complicated, so bizarre. I really appreciate you joining the show, and I know we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Brianna.
Thank you so much. All right, I appreciate Lance's analysis of the ransom note, and he mentioned that imposter, that fake ransom note. We're going to have that in a live interview on that later in the show. But coming up next, Nancy Guthrie. Who was she? Beloved in this community. What is her family saying? What is her friends saying? We've got a live interview with a KOLD Tucson reporter standing by here. She's going to be joining us live on the other side of this break. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much again for tuning into this special edition of True Crime AZ Live. I am joined in this segment by Mary Coleman. You're an anchor reporter at KOLD here in Tucson, one of the stations that received the ransom note.
Yes.
You've been reporting on this, and what I want to get from you is just, I mean, Nancy Guthrie, staple in this community.
Yeah.
When this first started unfolding Sunday night, and your stations learned about it, what did you know at that time, and was there some concern already from people in this community?
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeing that name, as you mentioned, a staple, the mother of Savannah Guthrie, there were a lot of concerns from a lot of us. So, we kind of played the waiting game and tried to see it, when people go missing, it's usually pretty quickly in our area that they're found.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's a great thing, right? Well, this one was a little different because a few hours went by and we heard nothing from law enforcement. So at that point, that's when we started to get a little concerned about where this was going. And then, as you mentioned, we were one of the stations that received that letter. We got that on Monday night. So once we received that and we got PCSD involved, it was apparent that, this wasn't a joke or a hoax of any sort.
Right. Learning about Nancy, and I want to spend a little time kind of talking about her. People are trying to come forward and share things about her. She went to church, she played mahjong. What have you heard, just from community people in the neighborhoods, communities and neighborhoods that you're familiar with as the national and international media come here, even us from Phoenix? You know this is your home. What's that like?
Yeah. Well, Tucson, for such a big area of more than 1 million people, it really is a tight-knit community. So it's a small, big city, I like to say. And that area specifically, I mean, you've been out there, it's gorgeous. There's mountains nearby. People are around walking their dogs. People are just so...
Okay, everybody, I just wanted to come on here and share her story because if that was one of my family members, especially my kids, my mom, oh my goodness, I would be going crazy. So yeah, I just want to come on here, put my little 2 cents in, share what I can share. And yeah, guys, when y'all go to sleep, just pray. Hopefully she will be returned safely. But you know how they say, the more days go by, the more critical it gets. I just felt in the need to do something. if it's just to share her story. I know her family would appreciate it. Every little bit helps, but it's just so sad, you know? Things have to happen like this. Just, oh Lord, I could not imagine going through this. I know her daughter's like, I can't eat, I can't sleep till my mom come. You know, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's all I want to do, just come on here and just share a little bit of it. And guys, y'all be safe out there. If you do have older parents or anybody in your family that's older, living alone, check on them. Get security camera and make sure you pay for everything you can pay for. Because that's what they said. She had a security camera, but they seen a person, but she didn't pay for that extra footage. So they can't even see who that person was. They said it might have been an animal, but since she didn't have that subscription part, they would never know what it was or who it was. So, yeah, if you have older parents, older family members that live alone, check on them. Have a security and, try to have a full works, outer works. But most of part is to check on your family members, please. Especially if you hear from them all the time and all of a sudden you don't hear from them, check on them. My goodness, I just couldn't imagine the pain that they are going through. But anyway, guys, you have a good night. And hopefully when we wake up in the morning, we'll hear some good news. Because the more days pass, the less hope they have. I'm just praying and hope, this turn out to be everything okay. I hope and pray. Oh, Lord, I just couldn't imagine. But anyway, guys, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like the video. And until next time, I will see you later. Bye, guys. And pray, and pray. Good night.